Do you know that feeling when you open your banking app and you instantly want to close it? Not because you're broke, worse, because there's a section you don't want to look at, like a forbidden zone. You already know what you'll find, and just imagining it tightens your chest. So you do what most people do. You glance fast, check the balance, avoid the details, and tell yourself, I'll fix it later. But later never comes, because looking closely hurts. And the wild part is, it's not always a huge expense. Sometimes it's forgotten subscriptions, repeat delivery, gifts to keep people happy, status spending, tiny installments, a fee here, a fee there. You're not hiding because you're stupid. You're hiding because it feels shameful. And shame is expensive. It charges interest in silence. It makes you avoid. And the more you avoid, the less control you have. There's a specific number where this changes, and it's not what you think. Most people will tell you to cut coffee, make a spreadsheet, become ultra-disciplined, and just stop spending. They push you into a punishment lifestyle. This is only math and willpower. But here's what they're missing. The problem isn't lack of rules, it's excess shame. And there's a smaller milestone that flips everything. It's not earning more money. It's not becoming a minimalist. It's not deleting every joy from your life. It's facing one thing the right way for long enough that your brain stops running from it. The number is 30 days of tracking, no drama, no witch hunt. Not 30 days of never spending, not 30 days of being a saint. 30 days of honest data, like a scientist watching an experiment. Because shame dies when you put light and repetition on it. I study financial behavior and consumer psychology, especially the invisible spending that drains your budget and your self-esteem at the same time. Subscribe and hit like if this helps, because this video isn't here to shame you harder. It's here to give you control back without making you hate yourself in the process. Before I explain why 30 changes everything, I want you to see this differently. Hidden spending isn't just money leaving your account. It's a symptom. It's your brain trying to protect your self-image. You spend, then feel, I shouldn't, then hide it from yourself, and that becomes a loop. That loop has an invisible threshold. Past a certain point, looking at the statement becomes an emotional threat, not just information. You avoid to avoid shame, and you lose the chance to fix it early. Most people don't know this threshold exists, so they fight with spreadsheets and motivation while the real problem stays in the dark. What we're doing here is simple and honestly freeing. You'll understand the shame rule. The more you hide, the more expensive it gets. The more expensive it gets, the more you hide. And we'll get break with a no-guilt method. 30 days of mapping, choose one leak, swap it for a 90% as good version that's 50% cheaper, and build accountability with yourself. Think of shame like mold. It grows in the dark, silently, and the more you try not to look, the more space it takes. Your credit card statement becomes that closet you avoid opening, because you can already smell it. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the magic happens in your brain. When you feel shame, your brain reads it as a social threat. If people knew, I'd be judged. Even if no one is watching, your body reacts like you're being watched. So your brain slips into emotional survival mode. In that mode, it chooses quick relief over clarity, because clarity hurts in the short term. That's why you avoid the banking app, avoid the details, avoid the subscription list, avoid seeing the same delivery charges again. Then very specific automatic behaviors show up. You forget free trials that turn into charges because canceling forces you to face, I got played. You buy for status, not because you love it, but because you want to feel like you're doing okay. You overspend on gifts to keep people happy because saying I can't feels like weakness. You order delivery more than you want because cooking feels like one more job in an already full life. And you use BNPL and tiny installments like magic because your brain reads only $29 a month as small, even when 10 of those stack up. It's like trying to plan a vacation while your house is on fire. You should organize, but emotionally you're burning, so you pick anything that shuts the feeling off right now. And the problem is, it doesn't shut it off. It delays it. But when you cross 30 days of mapping, shame loses its hiding place. Your brain starts learning, I can look without emotionally collapsing. Instead of, how do I hide this? You begin asking, what pattern is behind this? That's a new mental state that changes everything. You stop being the person who avoids to avoid pain and become the person who looks in order to choose. Instead of, how do I survive this month? You start thinking, how do I grow without sabotaging myself? Research tied to institutions like the University of Texas, and widely discussed by Brené Brown's work, highlights a simple mechanism. Shame thrives in secrecy and shrinks when you bring language and connection to it. This isn't soft talk, it's human regulation. When you name it, you regulate it. When you hide it, you amplify it. Money habits follow the same pattern as any other behavior loop. There's also strong evidence in avoidance psychology. When something feels emotionally aversive, we avoid it. And that avoidance brings short-term relief that reinforces avoiding again. So you feel better by not looking today, which makes it harder to look tomorrow. It's a loop and it doesn't break with guilt. It breaks with gradual, safe exposure. You might think, this is me being weak, I should have more control. And while personal, responsibility matters. That's not what drives the pattern. The secret is simpler and more encouraging. You don't need to become a different person. You need to remove secrecy from the center. Because when you remove secrecy, you remove fear. And when you remove fear, you can do math without pain and take action without self-hate. That's when the method starts working for real. Here's where the math gets exciting, because it gives your power back fast. This isn't about becoming a budgeting genius. It's about stopping the surprise attacks from your own statement. And once you stop being surprised, shame loses its main weapon. If you map your spending consistently for 30 days, something interesting happens. You realize the hidden expense isn't one monster. It's a family of leaks. And most of the time, they cluster into a few categories: subscriptions, delivery, status spending, people-pleasing gifts, gambling, BNPL, and tiny installments. Let's use numbers that are extremely normal in the US so this feels real. Imagine 4 subscriptions you barely use: $12.99, $9.99, $7.99, and $5.99. That's about $37 a month, small enough to stay invisible. Now add delivery, not even daily. 2 orders a week at $28 with fees and tip becomes about $56 a week, roughly $240 a month. And it comes with the same sentence every time: I just needed a break. Now stack BNPL installments, only $29 a month, on 4 different purchases. That's $116 a month, and your brain doesn't feel it because each payment looks harmless. Combine that with the subscriptions and delivery, and you're looking at something like $393 a month without feeling like you're spending $393. Reaching the first 30 days is the hardest cycle because you're fighting your own avoidance. You'll have days where you want to not track, not look, pretend it didn't happen. It's not easy. Most people quit because they confuse discomfort with danger. But here's what will blow your mind. The second cycle feels lighter. Once you've mapped a full month, you're no longer in the dark. And that alone reduces anxiety. And when anxiety drops, you make better choices without forcing yourself as much. Think about it. You did the same work. Look at the number and record it. But you saved time and mental energy because you had a resource working for you: clarity. That's the mechanism showing up. When you see the pattern, you stop negotiating with fantasy. Now comes the practical move that changes everything. You choose one leak, just one. Not fix your life, but close the leak with the highest emotional and financial return. And you swap it for a 90% as good version that's 50% cheaper. If the leak is delivery, the 90% version is something like grabbing ready-to-eat options from the grocery store once and having fast meals at home. You're not becoming a chef. You're cutting fees and impulse while keeping almost the same comfort. If the leak is subscriptions, the 90% version is choosing one service per month and rotating instead of paying 6 at the same time. If the leak is status spending, the 90% version is buying less often with a waiting rule. You still have style, you still get something nice, but you're not buying to prove yourself. And if the leak is people-pleasing gifts, the 90% version is a clear cap plus creative alternatives that don't become debt. When you do that, compounding shows up fast. Cycle 1. You find the leaks and stop lying to yourself. Cycle 2. You cut one leak and feel immediate relief in your budget and your mind. Cycle 3. You repeat and freedom starts stacking. When you reduce $200 to $400 a month, you create room for emergencies, faster debt payoff, investing, and breathing. The first milestone feels impossible, but the next ones get easier because you're no longer fighting in the dark. This isn't secret access, an internet trick, or millionaire mindset. It's basic math on your side applied to the place you leak the most, what you avoid looking at. The only difference between staying stuck and getting out is scale, and scale comes from repetition without guilt. Here's what most people miss when they talk about budgeting and shame. They think the goal is to become a controlled person who never slips again. But the real transformation is becoming someone who doesn't have to hide from themselves. When you map 30 days and choose one leak, you gain more than money. You gain identity. I'm the kind of person who faces it, adjusts it, and keeps going. That rebuilds self-esteem because self-esteem isn't built on perfection. It's built on consistency. You rewired your brain in a very specific way. You practiced discomfort tolerance, honest awareness without drama, and a pause before escape. And you proved you control your behavior, not the algorithm, not the impulse, not shame. Before this, your financial life gets trapped in micro decisions and micro lies. I'll cancel later. This doesn't count. Just today. No one needs to know. Next month, I'll fix it. Those lines look small, but they take up space in your mind like open browser tabs. You think about what you spent, what you should have done, what you need to hide, what you don't want to explain. That creates a kind of exhaustion that isn't physical, it's mental. That's why hidden spending drains self-esteem. It creates a parallel life inside your own mind. After you cross 30 days and start closing one leak at a time, you stop sweating the micro and start seeing the macro. You stop living in reaction to statements and start deciding before the problem happens. Then you focus on the big decisions that actually matter. You choose which subscriptions truly deliver value. You build a delivery system instead of a delivery impulse. You start buying with intention, not to prove yourself and not to numb yourself. This changes work and career in a very real way. When you feel ashamed about money, you negotiate poorly. You accept bad deals because you're scared of what if I need it? You feel trapped, and people can feel it. Your energy carries a quiet urgency. You're in a weak negotiating position. You avoid asking for a raise, avoid switching jobs, avoid saying no to unfairness because you feel like you have no margin. And shame keeps you obedient because it makes you believe you don't deserve choices. But 30 days changes everything because you gain walking away power both with yourself and with life. Even if you don't walk away, knowing you're not at the edge emotionally and financially changes your posture. You negotiate from strength, with calm, with clarity, without desperation. Then the cascade effect hits. You become more confident because you don't have a hidden part of your life eating you from the inside. Often you don't even need to use that power out loud. People sense it in your presence, your firmness, your no. Now the fatal mistake that pulls people back into the loop. This is where most people mess up. They track, close a leak, a start, improving, and then try to compensate with status spending. They buy to prove they're okay now, like life needs a visible trophy. That's dangerous because it reactivates the old mechanism, shame and comparison. You spend to look okay, and when you spend to look okay, you hide again when you're not okay. Don't do that, because this phase is the foundation of your future. If you want to celebrate in a way that strengthens you, not sabotages you. Something simple, planned, that doesn't become a bill or a story you have to hide. Because the win here isn't buying, it's freedom. Opportunities show up in a very specific place. Unexpected events and big decisions. Before, a flat tire, a medical bill, a home repair becomes panic and credit. After you close leaks, those same events become inconveniences, not tragedies. And when the unexpected becomes an inconvenience, life opens up for opportunities. You can invest in something that raises income, change, direction, say no without panic. And most importantly, you can respect yourself again, because you're not hiding from you anymore. This will make you laugh or cry, and because the hidden villain here isn't delivery or subscriptions or BNPL. The villain is shame, and shame is the emotional tax you pay on top of everything without noticing. It doesn't show up as a line item, it shows up as a reflex. You avoid looking, avoid feeling, and lose the wheel. Notice how cruel the loop is, almost perfectly engineered. The more you hide, the more out of control you feel. The more out of control you feel, the more you need quick relief to keep functioning. Shame makes you spend, and shame makes you avoid looking at spending, so you get trapped. The most dangerous part is how shame disguises itself as, "I'll handle it later." It uses polite, mature-sounding phrases that feel responsible but are just delay. When I have time. When I'm less stressed. After I get paid. That becomes a lifestyle where you're never ready because the perfect moment never arrives. Even more ridiculous is that shame actively destroys value. It doesn't just drain money, it drains good decisions, energy, courage, and self-esteem. It makes you choose easy today and pay expensive tomorrow, repeatedly, like you're subscribed to an emotional penalty. There's a painful irony. The more you try to look normal on the outside, the more expensive it gets on the inside. You spend to not feel behind, spend to not look weak, spend to not disappoint, spend to hold an image together. Then you hide because the image doesn't match the statement, and shame gets stronger. But I truly get it because what's underneath this is human. You don't hide because you're bad. You hide because you want to feel like a decent, responsible person who has it together. And looking directly feels like it might confirm your fear. Maybe I'm not that person. That's exactly where the rule changes. The shame rule is simple. What you hide grows and what you face shrinks, even if it feels uncomfortable, at first. So today you build a system that doesn't rely on self-punishment. It relies on repetition, clarity, and firm kindness. First, you map 30 days, and this is more psychological than financial. You're not tracking to punish yourself. You're tracking to stop guessing because your imagination always exaggerates and spikes anxiety. When it becomes data, it loses drama, and when it loses drama, you can act. Here's the golden rule: record without commentary. No speeches, no stories, no, this is just who I am, no, I'm terrible, no, it was a hard week. Just record because recording moves spending from secrecy into light. Secrecy is the fuel of the loop. As long as it's hidden, it feels bigger in your mind and controls you through anxiety. Once it's visible, it becomes a normal-sized problem that you can actually change. Second, you choose one leak. Just one, because attacking everything at once feels like attacking your identity, and shame pulls the fire alarm and you run again. Choose the leak with the biggest return, not only in money, but in peace. In the US, the usual suspects are predictable, which is why this works. Delivery with fees and tips that becomes routine, stack subscriptions with free trials that turned into charges, and BNPL that looks small but becomes a queue. But it can also be gambling just a little. Status spending to protect an image or people-pleasing gifts to avoid discomfort. The simplest criteria is this: pick the leak you avoid looking at the most. Because where you avoid looking is where shame lives, and that's where freedom lives once you close it. Your brain will want to pick the easiest one, but you pick the most liberating one. Third, you swap that leak for a version that's 90% as good and 50% cheaper. This is the key because you're not doing 0 or 100. You're doing sustainable. You're not fighting your brain. You're offering an alternative that keeps comfort and cuts the bleeding. If it's delivery, you build comfort without fees and reduce frequency without becoming a monk. That can mean grocery-ready meals once a week, having 2 quick options at home, or picking up without the app so you don't enter the hypnotic feed. The goal isn't perfect cooking. The goal is not paying premium convenience on the day you're most vulnerable. If it's subscriptions, you switch to one at a time instead of paying for everything simultaneously. Pick one streaming service per month, binge what you want, pause it, rotate to the next. You still get entertainment, just without paying 6 times for the same couch night. If it's BNPL, you create a simple rule that prevents stacking. Nothing new goes on installments while any installment is still running, because the problem isn't one purchase, it's the pile becoming routine. Add a 24-hour wait before any BNPL decision, because impulse installments turn into a cage. If it's spending, you don't have to become anti-stuff. You just remove buying from the role of proof. You wait, you buy less often, and you choose what you actually want, not what you want to show. You replace "how do I look" with "will this serve me 90 days from now?" If it's people-pleasing gifts, you create a cap and alternatives. You can do symbolic gifts, creative gestures, thoughtful notes, simple experiences, because affection doesn't need to become a bill. The point is to stop buying approval because purchased approval is expensive and never satisfies. Fourth, accountability with yourself without humiliation. You don't need the internet, you need a tiny ritual that repeats, a fixed time where you look without fear. 2 minutes a day or 10 a week, but always with the same rule: look, record, adjust. Without accountability, you drift back into "I'll deal with it later." And when you go back to later, shame grabs the wheel and drives you into autopilot again. Accountability is the antidote to self-deception, and it becomes light once it becomes routine. Now opportunity cost, so you feel impact without panic. Every time you avoid a $30 leak, you don't lose pleasure, you buy freedom and mental quiet. You buy less end-of-month anxiety, more emergency margin, faster debt payoff. Picture a simple, realistic scenario. You close one leak and save $250 a month. In 4 months, that's $1,000, a buffer that changes your body, your sleep, and how you respond to life. And the strongest part is, you didn't earn $1,000. You stopped losing $1,000 invisibly. Once you have that buffer, things change without you forcing it. You stop obeying fake urgency as easily. You negotiate better at work. You say no with less fear. You begin respecting yourself again because you prove your word has weight. The beautiful irony is, person A tries to look perfect, hides spending, lives in shame, and the budget disappears in silence. Person B looks, admits, chooses one leak, builds a system, and starts feeling lighter, even without earning more. That lightness isn't only financial, it's mental because you stop having a hidden part eating you alive. Here's what will surprise you. You don't need to become a different person to change this. You just need to stop treating yourself like an enemy and start treating yourself like someone learning a pattern. This isn't about misery, it's honest kindness backed by method. 30 days won't fix everything overnight, but it changes how you think about money and about yourself. It turns shame into data, data into choices, and choices into freedom, without emotional self-whipping. That's the difference between surviving in the dark and thriving in the light. Start today with a small but final decision. Map 30 days, pick one leak, swap it for 90% as good and 50% cheaper, and keep accountability with yourself. Trust me, your future self will thank you for the money, but even more for the peace you put back in your own head.